fix the substation, we decided that instead of giving the occasional discount on the electricity back to the people,
Right.
we'd keep the rate exactly where it was, put the surplus into a fund.
Right.
So we created a capital improvement fund that was specifically initially targeted to the substation. So in a matter of a couple of years, we'd accrued a few $100,000. We were not only able to build the substation without borrowing any money, but then there was also additional money available in the capital improvement fund to do other things. Now what's illustrative about that beyond the, how they did it, borrowing money in the way that you can do it, is this. When we decided to bring to the people the idea of the electric revenues funding the substation, we had a public meeting. And the old leadership tortured us. They said, you got to give the discount back to the people. They can't afford this. It's,
Right.
It's
$2
not
a
right
month.
to do. And quite frankly, next election, I lost re-election bid, and there's a possibility, that might have been the case. What's fascinating to me is the first meeting after I was out, I went to that meeting and I said, okay, you're in charge now. Are you giving the electric discount back? How much of a discount are we getting? You know what he said? Yeah, I don't think so. I think we're going to keep that. We're going to keep that fund going.
Yeah.
And that's not, that's fact. That's what happened.
Yeah.
And so
Well,
not only did he not have the vision to use the fund to basically rebuild the town, he was completely disingenuous about its use, and then he kept it himself. So the final part of this is, as far as I'm concerned, if over the 30 years he had been in office, he had done a similar thing with that electric fund, we could have had a rainy day fund that might have approached, I don't know, $5 million, $10 million,
At least.
without anyone noticing.
No.
It would have been a minimal amount every month, and that money would have been spread out among renters and buyers,
Right.
because that's the electric fee.
Well, this is the reason why leadership is important.
I believe so.
Leadership is important because, and not that he's a bad guy, he's a good guy, but his foresight is blurred, and he wants to put Band-Aids on things that need completely restructured, and that's where we're at right now. He's not a bad guy.
This isn't right. You're right. This isn't about the goodness or
Personalities, no.
niceness of people.
But leadership is important.
And when we, and I'm saying we because it was when we broached this subject of, first of all, we had our electric consultant tell us that the electric purchase rate's going down, and we said, really? How often does that happen? And he said, oh, it fluctuates. It goes up and down. I said, well,
I wasn't aware of that.
no,
When I was on council, I wasn't aware of that because that's when we first started being able to buy competitively.
Right, there you go.
We weren't able to do that before. And I was a novice, and I'm not going to deny that. So I just listened to what they told me.
Absolutely.
And I says, well, if we're saving this much, we can give that much, lower the,
Absolutely.
instead of putting it into the fund,
Well,
which
and
is
again,
a great
I suspect
idea.
that no one suggested the fund.
Yeah.
My point was this: there were 7 people talking. 7, not one guy saying, "Here's how we do this. Here's how we've always done it."
Right.
There were 7 people saying, "Okay, so what happens when they lower the purchase rate?" And Mike Lewis, who was our consultant, said, "Well, what we've always done in the past is we've just passed that on to the customer."
Yeah.
We said, "Well, does the law say we have to do that?" He said, "No, you're separate from the Public Utility Commission. You can
Right.
set your own rates." And the overarching kind of point is there were 7 people who really kicked it around, and there were a couple people who said, they're going to torture us. We're going to get out there and have this and we did. We had a public meeting to discuss this. We didn't just sneak it through on a vote or not even mention it, which technically I think you can even do with the electric rates. We had a public meeting, and those couple of folks were right. We got tortured. I got tortured for sure. But sometimes, the unpopular thing may indeed, in the long run, be the best thing to do. And
No,
now, if you'd ask folks, they barely notice it. And when Duquesne Light's rate increase comes, I think, in August, right now we're a couple percent behind or more expensive than Duquesne Light. Just a couple. I think like a $100 bill here for electric costs them about 93.
Right.
Come July or August, that'll reverse. We'll actually be cheaper. So it's not like what we did with the rates had any painful effect on people, but we're able to fix a substation that had to be fixed. We fixed it properly without any interest costs. And again, if someone had done that for 30 years, everywhere you look in Pitcairn, things that need to be addressed, we wouldn't be scrambling for
Right.
money. We would have never been talking about a bond.
Again, there's nothing against anyone who's running, but they would get in there as novices. As when I went in for 2 years, I didn't know which end was up. So I had to listen to this one and listen to that one and then determine what I wanted to do. Whereas you two guys have been there, and I have been very impressed with your ideas, and not just the substation, not just the electric, but other things that we've discussed on the way. And these guys just won't be ready. They're good people, but they will not be ready to handle some of the things that need to be done immediately. Because if we don't win, we could fall back 5 years. We could fall back 5 years, and it's time to be proactive and get right after this stuff right now. That's the way I feel. And again, I'm listening to you guys. I'm not, and some of your ideas are very impressive.
Well, I appreciate that. And again, we got 3 other people running, one of whom has served already on council, and George has a track record. You can take a look at it. You could ask him, what did you do? What did you do differently? The other 2 guys, you never know what they bring to the table, and they could indeed be wonderful assets. Again, my big concern is, and this is not guesswork, I've seen how this works. If all 3 guys were to be elected, it's not the end of the world, but if all 3 guys on the other side are to be elected, no one can convince me that Rollo Vecchio will not be the president come January. And if you know the borough code, if you've been paying attention to politics, technically it doesn't matter. All 7 members have the same duties, same obligations, same ability to do things. But as we all know, the president sets committees, sets the agenda,
Absolutely.
And as much as anything sets a tone for how things get done.
Just like when I wanted to sell the cable when I was on council, I was bucking the other 6 people, and that was not popular. So
Well,
I backed
this.
away.
After I met him, after I served with him for a little while, he told me exactly what his management style was. I'm sure you've seen this. His management style was this. He holds up 4 fingers and says, you got 4 votes, you get to do what you want. He doesn't say if you have the best ideas,
No.
you get to do what you want. He doesn't say if you listen to the will of the people, you do it. If you get 4 votes, everyone will tell you this is what he said, this is what he's done. And I'm, can he learn new tricks? Maybe. I don't think we've got the time to do that.
No, we don't have the time.
I think that
We don't have the time.
I think that we have put together a good ticket, particularly in terms of our ability to work with the other 4 people on council. And just for what it's worth, I've served with Rollo myself for 8 years, I guess, and never excluded him from a conversation. He will tell you to a fault. When we're in chambers, when we're in meetings, I ask him, what do you think? What's your experience? How'd you do this before? If he wants to share his experience and wisdom, great. If he doesn't, and occasionally he doesn't for political or tactical reasons, that's his prerogative too. But it's never been 6 people here and 1 there. And if you go back through the votes, you'll see Kevin and I disagreeing with each other about things. Not a lot, because again, people tend to, once you get onto the floor, have a good idea of where we're all headed. You'd love it to be about Pitcairn or 6 individual candidates vying for 3 spaces. I'm not quite sure how this one team against the other team started. It existed long before I showed up. I'd love for someday there to be
I didn't understand it either when I first got into it, and I always thought that the people who were Republicans were good people. I remember Eddie Peer, Johnny Cooster were Republicans. They were good people, and I was on council with them, and you're against them, you're for him. Well, and people tell you that. You're on the wrong team.
No, it's...
I've had people tell me I'm on the wrong team.
What I do know is this. When election time rolls around, like in Monroeville right now, I believe there's 12 people running for, I can't remember how many school board seats. 5, so, a couple of them have paired up because of experience, but mostly there's 12 people. 12 people telling their story about what it is they might bring to this thing. In Pitcairn, since I've been here, we got you against him against you, the endorsed party, which is him.
Yeah.
And that leads to nonsense like what happened 6 years ago when, he chooses not to run, he puts someone else on the ticket, they win in the primary, and then he replaces them with himself. Now, have you ever in your life seen that, in another place?
That was unethical. That was totally unethical.
And that's the kind of stuff that follows from this way of doing business.